Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, brought to you as always by the Elite Plus Network and FantasyGuru.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give it a like and a subscribe if you don't mind. And hey, if you're watching free on YouTube, we do offer this along with all the other podcasts on the Elite Plus Network. So head over to FantasyGuru.com, click subscribe, see what packages are there. By the way, I did hear the radio thing. It was game time, but I couldn't get the thing to work right, but I know I heard it on the radio. So if you're not sure about the pricing that you're getting all your discounts, please reach out to support at fantasyguru.com. We are offering some discounts, and I'm not going to try to lie to you and tell you what they are. I don't know when they run out, but at one point we were offering all packages for 50% off. So please head over to fantasyguru.com, click subscribe, check the packages that work for you. If you don't see some that works or you're not sure you're getting the best deal or the most bang for your buck, like I said, reach out to support at fantasyguru.com and be polite. Don't be mean. It's probably Ted. We know Ted's a grumpy guy. I'm a grumpy guy, so I'm not judging, but be nice to Ted. Maybe offer to send him some bourbon or cigarettes.
Yeah, there you go. That usually ends up getting some good graces with him. I've heard that.
Hey, who doesn't like a good dart? That's all I'm saying. I am your co-host, Rich Maletto. Sitting here always with the man, the myth, the legend beyond the curtain, Sean Engel. Please do give Sean a follow on X at SeanE247. That's SEAN, the fun way to spell Sean. And back again, we love it when Mark joins us, the Marlin himself. Give Mark a follow on X at DFS_Marlin. He is not just a race guru guy. He's a DFS guru. So he's a good follow. Please pay attention. He knows what he knows, and he's good at it. Gentlemen, it's 4th of July weekend. I gotta say, Sean, it doesn't feel the same when it's not Daytona on 4th of July. But, you know, the fans rumbling about maybe making Atlanta a 4th of July event on a Saturday night race. I got to tell you, I'm kind of down with that. I don't know about you guys, but we said this before. Atlanta reminds me of old school plate racing, what we used to see in the 90s and early 2000s at Daytona and Talladega. We don't normally always get the big one like we did, but I could do without the big one anyway. But I liked, Denny Hamlin said in his podcast, after the wreck, there was more space. I enjoyed the racing. I'm not going to lie. It was way more fun enjoying the show as a fan than, say, as a TFS analyst. I'll tell you that for free. I think Kenobi in our Discord chat, Sean, nailed it when he asked you to just tell him who's going to wreck. Kenobi, I know you were joking, but I wish we could do that, bro. But we're probably not sitting here because we'd be millionaires if we were.
Yeah, if only we could all be clairvoyants and just predict the future. But I will say this, that our very own Mark Hogan last week certainly was the case with that, and we have the tape to prove it. So you know what? I'm going to roll back the tape and let past Mark elaborate how well of a good job he just did from last week.
Chase Elliott's got a win here as well, and he of all of these high-end drivers, he's often starting in a low spot, typically midway through the field and around the 15th position. So if we see him start around 14, 15, 16 again, that's huge. Like, I don't think people realize that, like, if you have a driver who starts 21st and finishes 10th, they're going to record less points than a driver who finishes 13th or starts 13th and finishes 6th. So, like, getting some of those higher spots in the top 10, it makes all the difference. So I like Chase Elliott as well. I think he can have easily a good day. But yeah, my core 4 betting winners, I got Blaney, Logano, Cindric, Elliott. So I just went Team Penske and threw in a little Chase Elliott. Those guys are plus 800, 850, 900, and Elliott's plus 1400. So
have to give Mark the shout out right there. He nailed that call last week.
We won't mention the 3 Penske drivers taking each other out all at one time, but they were the class of the field. So I mean, if they managed to not step on their you-know-whats, I mean, Mark might have had a clean sweep.
Yeah, I mean, from a DFS perspective, if Penske didn't somehow get taken out there, then I would have been probably remembering that tidbit from last week a lot more, because I think all of my DFS entries were in disarray after a quarter of the way through the race or whatever that was. So No, I mean, Chase Elliott, I mean, he's been solid all year. He just kind of has flown under the radar and hasn't been overly flashy and hasn't had like the big wins, of course. So it was nice to see him knock one down, and he probably will go a little bit higher owned and be priced up a little bit more after this. So,
And
definitely for sure.
Stories win in NASCAR, and I'm upset I didn't tail mark on the Elliott, because all we heard all weekend was home track, home track, home track. And to Mark's point, he'd been trending in the right direction, had been just kind of missing, been there from a DFS standpoint as a good placeholder. But he couldn't save DFS lineups. I mean, if you had 3 or 4 of those drivers in those first 2 wrecks, you were just kind of smoked, because there's enough variance outside of that. But to chase him as a bet, bravo. And that was a story to chase. And I just want to remind folks, shame on me, because that should have been something we should have been pushing too, in addition to all the valid points Mark had. Home track chase, needing a win, blah, blah, blah. There was a lot of stars pointing in that direction. So hat tip, Mark. That was really well done. You pretty much nailed it all the way through from the starting position on. So bravo, sir.
I appreciate it. I just wish I put more money on it.
Right?
Yeah, 14-1. That's not a bad call out right there for sure.
No, not at all. And I mean, I thought I was being bold with Kyle Busch, and I don't know if he had a car to win, but he was running in the top 10, was doing what we said he would do, and no fault of his own, right? I mean, hearing the drivers' interviews after that wreck was pretty entertaining itself. Like, so what happened out there? A lot of smoke, and just saw cars all over the place, and just hoping you get through it, and then you get hit in the back, and it's all she wrote. I mean, not a single driver did you see really crying about it. Denny mentioned on his podcast he may have been at fault. There wasn't much, people wanted to kind of get on John Hunter Nemechek, but in all fairness to JHN, he was getting pushed in the front, or he was pushing in the front. He was getting pushed from the back. There's, like Denny said, there's no load on the tires. At the same time, you're trying to get going at the stage. Like, it's early in the race, but we all know that the restarts are where you make your hay. So it's a byproduct. We've talked about it. It's a byproduct of that style of racing. And for whatever reason, we have kind of avoided the big one like that, all the other Atlanta races. But that one, it puts the big one on Talladega on par. I mean, what did I see? Something like 29 cars involved in the one incident. Not all of them were out, but
at least half the field was involved in that one. And you know what? I don't think we even really had a bigger wreck during this entire year, unless I'm forgetting something. But I
agree. Massive. And I mean, you just saw anytime at these super speedways, they start wrecking in the first 2 rows, it's bad. It's just bad. And on a restart, it's going to be worse, because they're all trying to push and get right up there. And it's a byproduct of the racing. If we saw this all the time from Atlanta, I'd probably be bitching and crying about, because you guys know me. I hate the plates. I hate the drafting idea. But, man, at least Atlanta reminds me of the older days, where you get that single file line out front. Handling matters. There is ability. We saw plenty of passes. I mean, Carson Hocevar forcing it 3 wide numerous times. Dale Jr. about blew a gas. I mean, he's calmed down. He's more entertaining these days, but he about blew a gas. No, don't go 3. He got it to stick, So, I mean, we were seeing moves. We were seeing action. You guys tell me, from a fan perspective, take the DFS and the betting out of it. Fan perspective, what'd you guys think? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I'd say thumbs up. Thumbs up from the fan perspective, because the racing within that whole second half of the race was actually really exciting to watch right there. And especially you got within the final 10 laps, you had so many different lead changes. And I don't mean the side-by-sides. I mean actual cars moving front to back, passing each other right there. And it came down to the very last lap right there. What ended up being the difference was the Hendrick teammates just linking up, and right there, that sent Elliott past Keselowski for the win.
Yeah, I thought Cup was pretty enjoyable. The racing was good. The one thing that killed me this weekend, and I think maybe it was more for the Xfinity race than the Cup race, but just dealing with the weather, man. Like all the weather delays, and then you combine that with a super speedway / quasi with the draft, whatever, and you get a couple wrecks in addition to all the weather delays that you experienced earlier, and it kind of drags it out, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there for like 5.5 hours or however long it is because of the weather impacts that occurred. So I don't know. I don't think there's any way around it. But I would be curious what viewership numbers and broadcast numbers look like for races that are impacted by weather versus races that are not.
Interestingly enough, Mark, normally the rain delays have better ratings.
Really?
I was going to say, they did actually say that they got about 1.6 million viewers for the Cup race this past weekend.
Just felt like Xfinity. I was snoozing away on that one because we were waiting. That was on Friday night, right? So we were waiting.
Yeah.
It got pushed until, I don't know when it was, but it felt like it went super late. And then you had cautions and Austin Hill and people like Sammy Smith and Alfredo and all those guys wrecking. So
for the Cup side, the reason the delays they've theorized on is fans like to hear from the drivers. So if you notice during that Xfinity delay, they had that, I want to call it the groom room, whatever, they even gave it a name, right? Where they just kept cycling through drivers and talking to them. The challenge, I think, is most casual, even some hardcore fans, they're not as in on the truck and the Xfinity guys. And it's always been that way. I mean, go back to when Mark Martin dominated the Busch Series. The reason NASCAR wanted some of these Cup guys in these events was to put butts in the seats, because it was a way for fans to potentially see a driver up close, like if you're hanging down by the fence or the garage area that you wouldn't normally see on a Sunday when it's 4 times as packed and everything. But I just don't think people are as in tune with the personalities of the drivers. Like, that's some of the stuff they're doing with the Netflix, and we're hearing it's worked in IndyCar and F1. My wife's a perfect example. I mean, she watched Hard Knocks to really learn about the players. I'm watching Hard Knocks to try to figure out cuts and who's really got play skill and everything else. She wants the background on them, who they are, because it gets her connected, right? And I think people like that emotional connection. So people tune in and they love hearing from the drivers from the rain delays, not to mention, till recently, it was always hard to kind of know when they would go back to racing. I was bothered and excited at the same time in that at least we didn't have to drive the track much. It was really frustrating for all the lightning delays. Yeah. I get it's dangerous. We can't have people in harm's way. But the good news about all that was we really, once it cleared, we were able to go right back. And then it was like, crap, here's the lightning again. And I think on Friday, that just got prolonged. I just think, and at the end of the week, it's a shorter event. People are expecting to be done tuning in by 10 o'clock. Instead, we were just kind of getting started. Not to mention you had that wreck on lap 2, which, it's interesting. Sean brought up how fun it was kind of watching that second half of the race. I think Denny was spot on. Once we got rid of some of the cars, maybe the solution is a Daytona or Talladega with a similar package to like we have at Atlanta, but we can get away with the more cars there. Maybe the 1.5 miles are just a little too crammed for 40 cars. I don't know, but from a show perspective, I'm with you, Sean. The last half of that race after the wreck was really quite good. Outside of, you were hoping to see if somebody could hang with the Penske Fords, or, hoping to see, could Bell have moved up, because he had already moved up, when he wrecked, and, all the other storylines we were kind of hoping to see. But I tell you what, give me Atlanta on 4th of July weekend over this Chicago street race, and you won't hear me gripe. I'll be Mr. Happy, I promise.
I'm all for that too.
Yeah, I'm in on that too. But Chicago's not even a July 4th race. It's after it. We can't count it.
Yeah, it's a long weekend. I'll give them, because they always try to do it on 4th of July weekend. The 4th is going to move throughout. This isn't the 80s where 4th falls on a Wednesday. We'll run at Daytona anyway, which, not going to lie, I kind of missed that. There was something about the holiday and the fireworks and all of that. But maybe that's part of it too. Like, NASCAR's good American sport. NASCAR doesn't road race much, and that's where we're going for Independence Day. Aye. Let's just hope that
I'm not going to see it as a real 4th of July event, especially because it's after the 4th of July. I'm not going to count it.
Well, depending on what the protests turn into, because apparently they're blocking traffic, maybe it won't be much of a 4th of July celebration anyway. I'm kind of curious to see if any of this protesting stuff somehow migrates over to the the track, since the track is in the middle of downtown Chicago.
Yeah, but we'll see about that. We'll see. But as far as the racing at Atlanta is concerned, it was pretty entertaining, and it was interesting to see so many names that we don't normally see go after it and compete for the win right there, too. We had Eric Jones finishing in the top 5 right there in the 5th position. Brad was so close, but just didn't have the help right behind him. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had quite the race behind him. At one point, he was 2 laps down, and then he came back in order to finish 6th. And at times, he looked like he had a car that could get up there and win, too.
For people that want to call him Ricky Stenhouse, that was a hell of a save with a broken part on that car. So I'm a little overhearing this Ricky can't drive, this, that, and the other thing. He is doing more with less equipment than anyone else in that garage right now. Hat tip, Ricky Stenhouse.
Yeah. Zane Smith ended up finishing in the 7th position, another top 10 run for him. And then we had Carson Hocevar, as mentioned. He finished in the 10th spot. You had Chris Buescher finishing 9th. And then, well, we got to give a shout out to one Ty Dillon finishing in the 8th spot, and also throwing a good old line back at Denny Hamlin in the process, too.
Did you see Denny's comments on that by chance?
Yep, I did.
Oh, that was awesome. Did you, Mark?
Great.
No, what did he say?
Basically, he told his fans that were whining about it to shut up. He said, Ty texted him and said, hey, man, I was just playing around. And Denny's like, no, I love it. See, if you know Denny's talked about this before. If you play golf with him, you play pickup basketball with him, he runs his mouth and talks trash all the time. So the fact is, and he even said on his podcast, he goes, he was whooping us all day. The 10 car was in front of us all day. Like, he did. He did what he was supposed to do. And he had every right to say that. And I'm here to support it. So I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But, Denny was all for the comment. I think that's great. The personality that we talked about, that's the stuff that we want to come through. And I really do not understand the vile Denny Hamlin hate out there, because I feel like he's one of the most honest, fair guys. Joey's starting to realize maybe I am a sore loser. Denny was the first one to basically tell Austin Dillon last year, kind of, but I get it. Where everyone else wanted to hang him, so yeah, that was fun. And Ty Dillon, and I was too, man, we talked about him on the show last week, and I got a little cold feet. I'm not going to lie.
He ended up working out, though, but with that top 10 run. Hat
tip to Hocevar, because he brought that car back from the ruins. I mean, I don't know how much damage you saw from the one wreck. It wasn't his fault for once, but the whole right nose of that car was junk. So hat tip to him, too. Like, overall, I don't know of too many negative lines to take away from that race, because I feel like the wrecks are a byproduct of the type of racing. And we got to see, to your point, Sean, legit passes, none of this nose-to-nose stuff. It was coming down to the wire. We had 3 drivers that were all really desperate for wins at this point, in Chase, Brad, and Bowman, and they all are running out of time. So, in all fairness, everything NASCAR wanted kind of came to a head this weekend, and I'm not going to poo-poo on it.
Yeah. I'm in total agreement with you. And while we're out here giving hat tips, there's one more driver that we should definitely give a hat tip to, because he was 1 position away from a top 10 finish, and that was young Connor Zilisch finishing 11th right there.
This young man is so good, dude. I mean, I can't wait till we got Heim and Zilisch in Cup. I mean, and with Gibbs and Heim hating each other, like, the sooner we get some of these really young shoes. Jimmy Johnson was asked, Sean, you talked about this. Jimmy Johnson was asked about who he likes coming up. Jesse Love, and it looks like he's going to get the opportunity. Who was the other driver?
Oh, yeah, Connor Zilisch.
Connor Zilisch, that's right.
But you know what? We're going to be that's actually something we're going to be talking a little bit more detail about a little later on in the show. So let's save some more of that conversation for then and call that a tease. But in the meantime, though, there is one more thing we do have to address. We did not talk about the Truck Series race at all. And they went into an entirely different track. They went road racing at Lime Rock Park there, Rich. And Corey Heim, he put on a near perfect race. leading 99 of 100 laps. Lane Riggs being the one lap spoiler in that race.
And hat tip to Lane Riggs to lead that lap. I was off on the cheat sheet. Sean, you and I talked about it. I was really all in on Jordan Taylor. I like the price, the betting line, the IMSA background. I'm pretty sure he's actually driven that track before. I did not get to see the whole race, Sean. I only got to see part of the replay. You told me what kind of – feel free to fill us all in because I was pretty distraught until you told me how all the race played out.
Oh, yeah. Pretty much it was a very, very quiet and pretty orderly race within Lime Rock Park for a good amount of that race until like the last restart or two, that's when people are like, it's go time. I got to get positions. People started dive bombing each other and going off course. But in the meantime, even while that was happening, Corey Heim was just so fast. He ran away every single time they restarted by the third corner pretty much. So Heim, nobody was catching him. He dominated that race, but yeah, a few names like Jordan Taylor, as mentioned, ended up falling right towards the tail end of the lead lap right there. Raja Karuth was another one. Yeah.
That's why. Because
Riggs,
he was my contrarian play. He looked good.
Yeah, Riggs too. Lane Riggs as well.
And he Riggs was like top 3 for the whole race. I missed the very end of it, but he was top 3. And then I took your point, Rich, or maybe I don't know if you said it or Sean, but I went with Friesen and Slimp, and I threw him in the same lineup. And Slimp, I think he was like top 25 at one point, and then he fell back towards the end too. So I'm not sure what happened at the end. I missed it myself, but it obviously sounds like everyone got aggressive, and it just didn't work out for all those guys.
There, Mark. He DNF'd. So
well, then I batted 1,000 because I did mention Slip and Friesen because I thought they were both values because the trucks are better than where they qualified. And I thought Taylor, with the IMSA experience, I figured everybody would be on high, but this was an opportunity for some of the other ways for us to get, kind of contrarian. I wasn't sold on Riggs. That's the one I was very twisted about because he's been so good this year, but he's not really known as a road racer. So that's good to hear and see that actually played out a little bit. Raja was the one that I was kind of banking on for the contrarian play because he did so many laps at practice. And his lap times were right there in the top 10 throughout the whole run. So for where his price point was and where he started, I figured, man, there's no way there's going to be ownership there. So, if those 3 guys don't crash and burn, maybe it's a different, truck experience for us. But that explains why because I was shocked my lineup was that bad. I'm not going to lie. I went and checked the score and I was like, holy crap. Like I was that far off. Like this doesn't seem right. So, all right.
Yeah. As far as Lane Riggs was concerned, he didn't actually get crashed into. It's more like on the first corner, what happened to him was he ended up overshooting it and he locked up the brakes and just went off course as a result because he was trying to keep up with Heim right there on the last restart. They were side by side.
That's what I was expecting Riggs to do somewhere earlier in the race. Like, I just expected him to overdrive it somewhere, and that's partly why I just couldn't get there. I would rather say gambled on Chandler Smith, who I know won't do that type of thing, So, all right, but it's good to know that Lane can get around these road courses. And look, in my opinion, I think this is an easier road course than a lot of the places NASCAR goes to. I wouldn't call it a very technical track. The blind spots looked kind of interesting with the elevation changes, but overall, like we mentioned last week, I kind of think it's the pole position easy track.
Yeah, pretty much ended up playing out as it is. But what was interesting about the finishers in the truck race was that it was mainly dominated. The top 10 was dominated mainly by 3 particular teams. Tricon Garage, they had 3 of their trucks in the top 10, including Corey Heim winning, Gio Ruggiero finishing 3rd, and then Brent Cruz snuck off with an 8th place run. Then you had Thor Sport ended up getting 3 of their trucks in the top 5 with Ty Majeski in 2nd, Ben Rhodes in 4th, and Cam Waters in 5th. And then at the tail end of the top 10, you had 2 of the Bill McAnally trucks with Hemrick and Ankrum being 9th and 10th.
Hemrick, not a surprise. Ankrum, not a surprise. Cruz, not a surprise. I pushed him pretty hard. Gio getting in good equipment. Are we going to see Gio in some Tricon trucks next year?
Well, he's already with Tricon as it is right now, so I think he's going to probably be there again, especially since he's the second best driver at Tricon right now this season of the regulars outside of, obviously, Corey Heim.
Sure.
I would argue that setup for trucks is probably the hardest DFS type of slate to play. Like, and not just NASCAR, but like possibly any sport, because it's a track you don't have really any driver data on. It's different from the other two slates, so you have less practice qualifying data as well between the different series, and you're dealing with a lower level group to begin with. So it's trucks. So this is the lowest in the NASCAR at the NASCAR, I guess, major level. For lack of a better phrase. So
it's double A.
But you combine all of those things, and you've got volatile drivers with no data on a track that isn't aligned with the other two slates for the weekend. And that's the perfect storm for having a very hard time projecting what in the absolute is going to happen. So I would say we were right. We were I think your analysis was great. We were right to say that this was the slate to go the lightest on of the three.
It was, and I'm glad to hear about some of the guys I did push, because like I said, I didn't get to watch. I was in the yard and was just swamped. I felt pretty strongly about Cruz. That was one. Cruz and Meyer were two that, and Cruz more so because of better equipment. They were the ones I was really interested in. And they're not on the same level as Connor Zilich, but those are two very young drivers, like 16 type young. So, to hear them kind of hang with them, I don't know, Sean. We better start getting some name nomenclature for Cruz. I think we're gonna have to. Heim time's already been taken over, and that's going to be moving on. So we're gonna have to find a little something else, I think.
Oh, yeah, especially when Tricon, they're clearly going to be trying to build their lineup for the post-Corey Heim period before we know it here. Because I don't think Heim is going to be there after 2026 at the very latest. Let's put it that way.
Sean, I will be shocked, and I understand I've been beating this drum. I will be shocked if he's still there in 2026. I really will be. At this point, whether he wins a championship or not at this point, if he doesn't win a championship, that's just more proof how fluky it is. But whether he does or not, I can't see a sponsor, a team, and maybe there's a spot. Tease, maybe we already have a spot for him.
Yeah, maybe. But I still think the wildest stat about Corey Heim winning as much races as he did is he now has more wins than Matt Crafton in his entire truck career.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Because Crafton's like a 20-year vet. That is absolutely insane. And the funny thing is the last time Heim had a crazy stat like that, remember last year or the year before when he was sick, and he still maintained the points lead after taking a 0 at a race. I don't think people are grasping how dominant this young man has been in the truck series. It is mind-blowing that Zane Smith wasn't this dominant, Cup ride. John Hunter wasn't this dominant in trucks, Cup ride. Ty Gibbs wasn't even this dominant in trucks, Cup ride. So blown away.
Yeah, 3 years, and he already has more wins than Matt Crafton, who is considered a future Hall of Famer in NASCAR.
Kyle Busch, watch out. I think someone's chasing your record, buddy.
Yeah, if he keeps getting a few more, he's already going to be in the top 10 most all time.
If I was Kyle Busch, I'd be like, who needs sponsorship? We need Heim out of trucks. I don't want him in Xfinity. Let's just go straight to Cup. Who needs help here? Austin, are you sure we can't work out a deal? Let's just get Heim in your car, buddy.
Just tell RCR and Chevy to just outbuy 2311 in his driver contract right there.
Sell the farm.
Oh man, that's great stuff. But that's the weekend in a nutshell. A lot of racing action happened. Lime Rock in Atlanta. Yeah, some fun times to be had, some other not so fun times. But hey, we get to move on and we get to talk about other things, including NASCAR silly season. We got a couple of headlines to cover with that today. But let's start off with the big one right there that was made official this week. Daniel Suarez and Trackhouse Racing, they mutually agree to part ways after the 2025 season. So Daniel, he's leaving that 99 team. And now there's an open spot at Trackhouse. We were wondering all year if he was going to be able to stay with this team after this season, but the big domino has fallen. So now silly season is really on from here.
So what if 2311 doesn't get a third charter?
Well, 2311 already has 3 currently.
So they can't get a fourth, right? That's already been established. That stuff's grandfathered in, right?
Yeah,
So
basically.
what if Herbst is still under contract, got the sponsorship? Why can't Trackhouse buy out that contract?
Well, really, the thing is that Trackhouse has 3 charters. We know Ross Chastain is their guy. They're not going to let him go anytime soon.
Right.
They got SVG, who that's their
Right.
road course killer.
Right.
They got another driver contracted in the Xfinity Series right now, who is also a hot young talent, Connor Zilic. So it's pretty much everybody and their mother is expecting that Connor Zilic is going to take Suarez's place.
I was going to say, are we already going to have a full-time Cup ride for Connor Zilic starting next year? Is that what's going to happen? Like, that's insane. And I'm not saying he's not worth it because, look, that guy doesn't drive super speedways. He's not even an oval dude. And he's now done it twice at the super speedways in Xfinity and now in Cup where he's shown he's got the prowess to do it. Well, we got to find a seat for Heim here, Sean. So we better start. Somebody's got a contract expiring somewhere. Because Jesse Love's coming up too, right? Isn't that already a done deal for Legacy?
That's not necessarily a done deal yet. I'll get into more of why that is in a little bit here, because we still got to talk through Daniel and Trackhouse here. But yeah, everybody is expecting that Connor Zilic is going to be the guy to take that number 99 seat right there because Trackhouse hasn't contracted. So now the question is, since we're basically penciling Zilic into that car there, how well do you guys think he's going to do next year full time in the Cup Series, taking over that Trackhouse seat, especially compared to Daniel?
Oh, he will far exceed Daniel. I fully expect up and downs like any rookie. The ups being on par or better than Ross. The downs, kind of what we've seen with John Hunter, Nemechek, Ty Gibbs at times, right? That said, Zilic seems to have really adapted faster, in my opinion, to all the different cars he's been in. Now, to Ty Gibbs' defense, when he ran part-time in Cup, he also flashed at times, right? It wasn't until he got the full-time ride that it kind of looked like things were fizzling out. And, you know, I don't want to downplay this, but Chris Gabehart, you know, being a part of that team now that started at Atlanta, and where did Ty finish? So this goes back that I've said about teams and the people behind the scenes that we don't talk about. Bubba and the car chief and the communication, Sean, that you brought up before, and we've seen the improvements there. So, you know, I don't want to get the cart before the horse, but we've all talked about it. There's no reason the equipment isn't any different between the 1 and the 99. So why is there such a wide variance between Ross's finishes and Suarez's?
Yeah. Ultimately, the two different drivers had different skill sets, though, and we've even seen that with SVG as well. Now that he joined the team this year as a third entry for Trackhouse, and we've seen how good SVG is on the road courses. That's his specialty. He's still trying to figure out the ovals, but he's starting to get there bit by bit. Yeah,
I will say this from a concern standpoint. Ask Chip Ganassi what it's like to take 2 young, talented drivers and expect to use good notes. Because right now, the only good set of notes that they've got as a team, you could argue at least Suarez had some being from the other car and more experience, but I would argue probably not great set of notes because it hasn't been showing up. Now you've got SVG, who really doesn't have any sort of background in the old Cup car. His strength is definitely notes on road courses, but the ovals, he's obviously listening. So where does Connor Zilic really fit in? Like, I could argue that it would make sense to bring in a guy like Mark Martin. Everywhere Mark Martin went, the teams got better, right? So they won't do it. But I'm just saying maybe we should pump the brakes a little bit on what we expect full time from Zilic, because he's not necessarily going to be, the notes and stuff he's getting in the Xfinity series are top notch because of the teams he's racing with there. He's got people like Justin Allgaier to lean on, right? Mm-hmm. So having a young teammate like Carson Guapo, they can probably communicate with each other about the things they're learning, but they've got someone like even a Sammy Smith or even a Justin Allgaier that can really chirp in their ear about what it should feel like, why, where they want to change, because we all have the telemetry they can all see. I'm sure Ross will do that for Connor, and I'm sure SVG will too, but I got to believe both Connor and SVG are more on the list. I've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so let me listen type of thing, where Ross is probably doing all the talking. And really, in fairness to Ross, he's a young vet. I mean, it's not like you've got a Denny Hamlin or even a Tyler Reddick, kind of being that wise old man on the fence post, So that'll be interesting, because Trackhouse has definitely taken a step back from 2 years ago from a speed standpoint.
Yeah. Mark, what's your take on the whole take with Suarez leaving and now Connor Zilic basically being the main driver tapped in order to fill his spot in Cup, perhaps?
Yeah, Rich nailed it on the head. I think in the long term, Zilic is going to be an incredible driver. Like, I don't know about Christopher Bell standards or a guy like that, but we're talking pretty close. And I think it's just going to take some time, just like a lot of these other rookies. The one thing I'll say about Zilic is he's already showing those flashes of brilliance at the highest levels. And, that I think that went a long way last week or 2 weeks ago with the Xfinity race. I think that was with Dale. So,
you mean that Pocono when he won?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, that was very impressive. I had my doubts. I think it goes a long way in showing how coachable he is and how quick and willing he's able to adapt and take on new information. So, he might struggle coming out the gates, but I wouldn't be surprised if 2 years in we see him maybe stealing a win here and there and knocking down some consistent top tens.
Can we find a line on Rookie of the Year yet?
Well, we don't even know if he's going to be the only rookie next year either, if that's the case.
That's what I know, but I want to take the odds. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping there's a lot of questions so we can get some long odds, because once we find out there's only 2 drivers or 3. Now, I tell you what, if it's Heim and Zilic, they're probably both can be similar odds and be very close. And that would be a fun bet. I don't know how strong they would be, plus 800, plus 500, plus 300, that type of thing. But, if we because it's not uncommon to only have 1 or 2 drivers, right, Sean? It's the fun years when there's 4 or 5. And I don't think we'll see that. But that's what I'm saying. If we can get some early lines on Rookie of the Year, like, hey, there's no guarantee he's actually going to have a rookie year, but F it. Game on. I'll throw some money at it.
I think it's a good reminder from like a DFS process standpoint too. So one thing I do in football that I have a lot of success with is I think about what my long-term philosophy is for the entire season. I say, okay, I think these are going to be the top 5 teams. So I need to make sure that I'm consistently targeting these players on more of a week in and week out basis and having enough exposure in enough weeks throughout the season. And it's the same thing with NASCAR is we could look at it and say, all right, I'm expecting these rookies to make some noise at some point in the season. So I'm circling these races, just like these guys are probably circling these races. And I need to make sure I give them much more consideration on these given weeks and at some point throughout the season, because I personally feel that at some point they're going to knock down a couple top 10s and maybe a win at some point along the way. So we have to consider our long-term plan before the start of the NASCAR season, and then make sure that we're making these picks throughout the season at some point to align with that picture that we're painting.
We need to bookmark this, Sean. We should do, whether it's a preseason show, something. I think we should do exactly that, where we all bring teams we're focusing on based on how the year ended, crew chief changes, et cetera, and highlight, hey, we want to make sure we're getting some exposure to these teams, at least early on. Here are some drivers that might start a little slow, but we know there's real good potential. They're going to pay off at low values. We want to be ahead of the value increases like we have in the past with the Ziliches and the Heims as they, got their first opportunities. I think we should totally do something like that, whether it's a write-up or a pod. Mark, I think that's a brilliant idea because that's a good way to keep an honest check on ourselves.
Agreed on that right there. Now, before we move on to the next story, we have to ask the other side of this question there too. What do you guys think is next for Daniel Suarez after this season? Do you think he's going to stay in Cup, go to Xfinity, retire from NASCAR, go to another motorsport? What do you think is going to be at play? I have some ideas now, but I want to hear what you guys think quick first.
Well, he's doing some of the broadcasts, right? So, I mean, could see him moving into that a little bit more and doing some part-time rides here and there, but I don't know. It feels like he's on his way out.
In my opinion, he would be smart to try to find a full-time Xfinity ride. If not that, a truck ride. And at least see what the next 2 year brings in that regard. It didn't work out for Matt DiBenedetto. The jury's still out on Harrison Burton. It parlayed into a Xfinity career for Justin Allgaier, and he's not alone. We've seen this before. That could be what Chandler Smith is going to end up dealing with, over the long term of his career, full-time truck, full-time Xfinity. Matt Crafton, he went down that road too and made a decent career for himself in trucks. If I was Daniel, and maybe trucks is where to go because trucks in this current Cup car are a little closer than the Xfinity car. But if I were him and I wanted to stay here in the States and I wanted to make good money, I think he needs to find a full-time Xfinity ride.
So it's funny you should mention about the Xfinity ride because one of my ideas for Daniel is literally, and this has been something that's been kind of discussed across social media platforms, is for him to literally do a ride swap with Zilich and then take over his old ride in the Xfinity series with JRM. That's one idea that I thought was flying around out there. But I do think, though, that there are some other ideas that I think could be in play, too. Like, if he was intent on, in order to stay on Cup, I think there's really only maybe 2 or 3 options that I can really consider right there. Now, I think option... Yeah. Oh, the dogs are barking because they want to hear about those options. Well, option
he's
number...
He's not a Suarez fan's the problem.
Man. Okay, then I'll keep this brief then. Option number 1, Kaulig Racing, maybe replacing Ty Dillon in the 10. Option number 2, if Justin Haley continues to underperform, Spire has discussed the idea of potentially kicking him out after the end of the season due to lack of performance. He could go over there to Spire in that number 7 team. And the third option kind of ties into the next story here, but Legacy Motor Club being a potential possibility if he wanted to stay in Cup, if they get a third charter.
I could see Spire simply because they do have sponsor relationships with Mexico-based companies. So that spot kind of makes a lot of sense.
I think it's potentially in play, but I think it all depends on how well Justin Haley performs for the rest of the year. But so far, Haley's been kind of performing below expectations, and that's not a good look for him.
It's a letdown. He's been a letdown. Corey Himes available.
Yeah, just get Heim a ride somewhere. But transitioning over towards, speaking of Legacy Motor Club, well, Jimmy Johnson, he does a podcast with Marty Smith. And on that podcast, we alluded to this a little bit earlier. He did also mention that Legacy Motor Club as a whole is still trying to work hard towards getting a third charter for next season. I know they're still locked in the whole lawsuit battle with Rick Ware Racing for one of their charters. But now we don't even know if they're even going to get a charter for next season, but that's not going to stop Jimmy Johnson from trying. And he was already on that podcast mentioning different names that have his eye. Like he mentioned some of the regulars in the lower series, like Chandler Smith has his attention. Harrison Burden was another one that was on his mind. But he said that if he had to pick maybe 2 drivers that he wants maybe for an open seat at Legacy, he mentioned the 2 names we mentioned earlier, Connor Zilich and Jesse Love. So overall, this is another interesting thing because I know like maybe a month ago or so, Rich, on this very pod, we talked about Bob Pockris maybe linking Jesse Love to Legacy Motor Club and perhaps having some talks over there. That would be very interesting to see this fruition now that Jimmy Johnson himself has kind of acknowledged this. Wouldn't you say, Rich?
I feel like it's almost a done deal. Like the fact that first Poppers doesn't spread BS. So it's kind of like Adam Schefter in football. When he says it, you tend to listen because it's really, really rare. Lee Spencer's the same way. They don't leak or share stuff that they don't have permission to or that they aren't in the know on. So first of all, you got to take some, understand there's some real credence to the statements. 2, either they're working through a deal because Jimmy's trying to Mr. Love a little bit, to show him some extra love. But look, there's no spot for him at RCR. There's just not. So it's going to have to go somewhere. And Love was a part of Toyota, I believe, at one point.
Yeah, the ARCA series. They won a championship together where he won half the races that season.
Yeah. So, and Love is another one that is probably going to do, Jimmy was a driver that did better in Cup than he did Xfinity. He really wasn't much of an Xfinity talent. And so just because drivers don't perform at the other lower levels doesn't mean they can at the higher levels, right? Sometimes the more difficult it is, the better they are. So, and I think that kind of fits Love a little bit more. I would say that the big question mark is where do they get the charter from? Because I do not see Jimmy getting rid of John Hunter or Eric Jones, and I think it would be foolish to.
Exactly. I do think that's the biggest obstacle right there, that there's no clear indication of where a third charter can come from. I know he did say he's really wanting to work hard. He wants that third team for next year, but he did say, though, that maybe there's a chance that he might have to wait till 2027 for that one, too. So,
or maybe Dodge.
Yeah. I know it feels like a bunch of these teams are waiting for just the extra charters to come in at this point right here.
Yep. Because there's not enough charters going around.
Yeah, it's a hot commodity right there. Mark, what do you think about the idea of Legacy trying to get a third charter and chase one down here? What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think like you said, there's options out there. I think Jimmy Johnson, who wouldn't, I just the prestige of racing for Jimmy Johnson is probably appealing enough to some of these guys. And, but there's also a lot of room for them to make a name for themselves and almost kind of, up the brand of the team itself. So you can kind of come in as a rookie and all of a sudden be the driver of the team. And you don't even have that chance with every team. So I think it's exciting, but like you said, getting the third driver, getting the third charter is going to be, that sounds like a huge undertaking. So, and I don't know what that process looks like, but it doesn't sound easy.
It's like selling season tickets, Mark. Serious. It very much is. It's convincing someone that, hey, you have the income and this is a good place to put it. You can use it for all sorts of, business endeavors and personal endeavors. And, it's a lot of door knocking and phone calling because it's, everybody and their brother wants one. It doesn't make sense. And now that Rick Ware has sold, I think that complicates things because Rick Ware had no problem leasing these out. And, BJ McLeod sold his. So, the teams that were kind of known for leasing these out to let these teams and drivers kind of see what's going to work, that's been drying up pretty quick. So that's not even taken in consideration that 6 charters just might magically disappear. And now all of a sudden be in the hands of NASCAR with this whole lawsuit. So then the question is, let's just for for argument's sake, say NASCAR takes back, the courts ruled NASCAR gets to take back these charters. Well, Tyler Reddick is going to go race somewhere with a charter. Now, that's part of his contract, so that's going to happen, right?
Same with Bubba, too.
I would say Bubba, too. So there's two of them there at 23-11. Then you got the front row guys. I don't know what Zane Smith has in his contract, but I venture it's probably something similar. And if not, okay, so now there's one available of the group. So there's a lot of moving pieces here to make this work. And I found it interesting. The guy that bought Rick Rare Racing is like, well, these charters aren't worth enough. They should be worth $100 million. Okay, you say that, but teams aren't ponying up more than 40 or 50 million and are feeling like they're overpaid. So, and you buy it for 100 million, where do you get the cash to run the team then? So I'm very curious that this guy and look, he does have a background. He came from one of the other teams, so it's not like he doesn't know what he's talking about, but I'll be a doubter. I want to see the proof in the pudding of this guy turn it around at Rick Ware and drive up these charter prices.
It's interesting. You brought up that guy, TJ Pusher was his name.
Yes.
And recently, apparently on the internet, word has been gotten out there that he apparently paid about 9 figures in order to buy out Rick Ware Racing completely.
$100 million he paid to buy the team. Yeah. So in his mind, he's got 2 charters. He's going to easily double up his money, right? If he feels the charters are worth $100 million, he got a bargain because he just got 2 charters. I think it's Rick Kaufman reincarnated, Sean. I do. And we'll see. I will gladly be wrong because if the charters get worth that much, the sport is doing well and I should eat crow about it.
Yeah, but overall, there's a lot of little stories that are developing and we're kind of following here, especially because there's so many little factors and moving pieces. It's like Mark mentioned about how there's a lot of moving pieces over there too. So even then, such as we even talked about Daniel Suarez leaving Trackhouse and that opening up a seat right there. Even drivers are moving in and out of rides is another piece of the puzzle right here too. And now that big domino's fallen, we're now going to start to see more and more stuff happen over the course of the season. So silly season is going to have some aspects to it. That's for sure.
As long as Pusher doesn't turn into JD Stacy, we'll be all right.
Yeah.
If you don't know who that is, Mark, it's an owner that basically defaulted on everything.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
No, it wouldn't. It definitely would not.
But like a Bernie Madoff situation.
Very similar. Yes. You're in the ballpark.
You're in the ballpark. Yeah, he's hitting those turns right within that ballpark.
Yeah.
Trying to connect it to racing how I can, but segues, they sometimes work, sometimes you just throw them out there and see if it sticks.
Well, here's the segue. We're heading down the road and we're going road course racing, Sean. So let's talk about the street course.
Yeah, Chicago's street course. So this is the 3rd year that we're going to be having this race. It's a road and street course. And yeah, I know Rich has a lot of strong feelings about this track, as does a number of people in NASCAR fandom. They certainly have opinions too. But this is where we're racing this week. So we got the short track and road course rules package. This will be the 2nd round of the in-season challenge, which, man, NASCAR, please do not throw your in-season challenge and open it up at Atlanta next year. If you have any semblance of a brain, please. Thank you.
What are you talking about? It was brilliant. They got away from paying a fan $1 million. What are you talking about? The NCAA bracket's, 4 times as big? And they didn't bust in the first weekend. So,
that is ridiculous.
They accomplished what they want. And shame on us because we talked about it. We talked about there was going to be some oddball stuff. And I am kicking myself for not just picking a whole bunch of upsets because it was Atlanta. Shame on us. If it had been Daytona and Talladega, how many of our brackets would have gone way less chalky? Because Mark pointed it out. we were all pretty freaking chalky. And granted, we've never done this before, but I guarantee you, Sean, they will absolutely do the bracket launch at Daytona, Talladega, or Atlanta. I promise you, it'll happen again.
You just got to remember to do it again. And I feel like it's almost like the structure is you just got to pick a ton of upsets, but then you still got to go with like a powerhouse driver to win it all. Because right now it's looking pretty good for Chase Elliott.
Well, and we said he had a good path. We all three had Elliott going a good little ways, and we had someone like Dinger that could kind of slip through. Well, now that player could be a Ty Dillon, right? Or it could be what was the other upset? Was it Reddick and
Reddick beating Larson was one of the upsets right there.
Right. There's another one because the next two tracks bode well for Reddick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the drivers that do well at Dover that we talked about, the Larsons of the world, they're done. Hamlin, Larson, they run well. They're out.
Yeah, even Christopher Bell lost out to Ricky Stenhouse right there too, which apparently was not a popular choice in the bracket as well.
And shame on us because it was bonus points for picking upsets. Yeah. So if we're going to talk about it from a DFS and betting standpoint, what do we always want to do? We want to chase the money or we want to chase the points, right? The points, it paid for us to at least have half of our first round upsets, especially at a track like Atlanta. So going forward, I hope we do it again. I hope they put it in Atlanta because I think we will be smarter about it and we can stand to gain from it. I really believe that.
Think about it. It's like a free lineup. So, you have nothing to lose just to place a bunch of upsets. And man, I agree though.
Wrong?
It's a lottery ticket tournament type of, play. But at the same time, like you said, like we pretty much all said it. And we pretty much all had kind of chalk when we created our lineups. The only thing I'm kicking myself in is after we talked about it, then not going back and maybe just starting from scratch and creating a new bracket from there. That's because once you talk it through, it's, hey, we don't have to necessarily stick to our guns from last Thursday night or last Wednesday night. We just have to continue to formulate what we think is going to happen as we get closer and closer to the race. And it's not tinkering. It's coming up with a final decision.
Yeah.
Smart. I love the way you phrased that.
That being said, though, I'm glad that at least Nemechek beat Barry since I know we were questioning that last week.
Yeah.
And once again, he was fast and up front. And once again, to Sean's point, he found a way to get collected because I was really looking forward to seeing how Barry was going to do, Sean. Because I felt good. I wanted to have him in the lineup, and I felt good. I felt like it was contrarian. I felt like he had the speed still. Like all things were pointing to Barry could be a really good lineup play for the week. And no.
Think about all those additional head-to-heads, too, that were like plus, some of them plus 250, plus 270. Like, you have the Ty Dillons over Denny Hamlins. Like, honestly, if you just went through and took all of those long shot bets on a super speedway, you probably would have ended up in the green.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, Mark. I was sitting here going, it's a shame we didn't say, let's go ahead and let's go after individually these longer odds. And we don't have to win all of them. Winning 2 of them out of 6 would have probably kept us in the green for as long as the odds were. I mean, we were getting in head-to-heads, winning like odds, plus 300, plus 250. So, no, as soon as I saw that post I shared with you guys about all brackets busted, my first thought was, why did we not push more of these upset long shot? Because we said from the beginning, the odds weren't right? The only time they were right is when the guys were really the underdogs, the Ty Dillons, Reddick, not as much, right? Because he's not really a true underdog, but Ricky Stenhouse was. Zane Smith was. There was one other one that was like plus 500, right? And all we had to do was hit 1 or 2. And man, we would have looked not only been in the green, we would have felt so good looking brilliant.
Yeah. But I will say this, though, for those that still want to follow along with the challenge, NASCAR's still holding the brackets, but DraftKings Sportsbook is also doing more pools that if you go on DraftKings Sportsbook, they're now doing a pool for this round of 16 here, so you can pick the matchups that way as the bracket has continued with how it's now set. So keep that in mind there, too.
I won't be doing that because I guarantee you they want money to do that now, and the road courses, while wild, is not as wild. So I feel like it's like Mark had warned us early in the year about everyone chasing the place differential. Now we're at a place where it's not as heavy. Everybody's going to be upset and wanting the upsets, and they're going to start chasing that. I'm going to go let them feed the beast.
But I don't know. I just feel like now it's like you look, everyone's going to do that. So now
do we go chalk?
With the safe approach like we did going into the podcast last week.
It's not a bad idea, right? It's not a bad idea.
Because now you're investing in top talent across the board, and you're picking and choosing maybe your upsets.
That being said, though, there are still a few interesting matchups that if you were to start from this week going forward, there are a few matchups where it's clearly one-sided towards one driver. Like you look at Elliott versus Nemechek, for example. That's clearly one-sided. But then there are... I don't know,
man. That's a trap. I feel like that's a trap because we all assume Elliott, shoe in, no problem.
I'm just saying I think that's more one-sided compared to, at the very least, you got a matchup with, like, say, Eric Jones versus Ricky Stenhouse, where I think that's going to be actually pretty close.
That's fair. I'm just saying that's one of those trap ones, right, where it's a gimme, should be automatic. Every one of those is what bit us last week, right? And John Hunter actually runs okay at road courses. He's not Ty Gibbs, but he does okay. Like, he really does.
That's true because he did end up finishing well at Mexico City just a couple weeks ago right there. Yet, the kicker is, though, Elliott did finish better than him in that race, too.
Fair enough. That is one where I would consider taking the lopsided side, I guess is where I'm coming from, Sean.
Fair enough. I think that's valid with that one. There's a few interesting matchups right there. I think a really interesting close one is Allmendinger versus Ty Gibbs right there. That one's interesting.
That's spicy. One's spicy because I think a lot of people are going to assume Dinger, and I wouldn't. Like, what are the odds on that? What is Ty Gibbs getting?
Minus 140. Dinger's plus 100. It's close. I think DK's got it right.
I was going to say, I was hoping they had it the other way around. That was my hope. But no, I'm with you, Mark. I think DK has it right.
That being said, just to follow up with you, since you're like, maybe I might take JHN after all, he has the highest plus odds of all the head-to-head matchups at plus 195 at the moment here.
Oh, that's not enough. He should easily be plus 250. They are jipping us on the odds.
They're stealing money from people.
They are. That is terrible odds. Oh, I can't do it now, Sean. That's the most lopsided. I can't do it. Won't do it.
I mean, so maybe the theme then does continue. Maybe DraftKings is saying we're going to see a bunch of upsets just like last week. And, because last week, that's what we said too, is like, we were like, they're not giving them enough juice for some of these underdogs in these head-to-heads. And we wanted to refrain from a lot of them, but clearly they must have known that half the field was going to wreck. And maybe we see a little chaos this weekend too.
Someone from DK was down there spraying WD-40 on bumpers.
I mean, it was presented by DraftKings, so they do have the insider track there.
The only matchup where both drivers are at minus odds is Eric Jones versus Stenhouse, as mentioned earlier.
Lame.
But even though technically the betting aspect is something that's going to be in play there, it's important. The DFS aspect of this race, we got ourselves a low lap count right here, so we're not expecting dominators to be the biggest factor when it comes to DFS lineups. But I do think place differential and finishing position are greatly going to come into play with this race right here, especially because this is a track that, as we've seen now, it's easy to make mistakes. So drivers can get into the wall. Drivers can end up missing a corner, losing a few spots, spinning out. We've seen all sorts of things happening right here. And then there's also the unknown of the rain being in play too, as always.
At least the forecast looks good. We were 2 for 2 on rain, but the forecast does look good. I'm going to throw this out to you guys. The top 3 price drivers in the Cup Series this weekend are SVG, Larson, and Bell. Do you know where they finished in last year's race?
Oh, none of them really
all
made it to the end, if I remember correctly.
37, 39, 40. Dinger finished 38th. Just to throw that in there as another curveball. So,
yeah,
place differential was absolutely massive. 3 or 4 of the top 5 started in the top 10, so it wasn't as massive. But to Mark's point, you score more with those guys, even though you don't get as much place differential. However, the vast majority of the top 10 was people that moved up 10 to 15 to 20 spots. I mean, even perfect example to Mark's point earlier, Ryan Blaney started 17th, finished 10th. I can almost guarantee you he was a part of winning lineups because of his price point.
Yeah. And then, I remember 1 year ago, we were talking on this very podcast, and then I ended up mentioning Joey Hand at the time. And then I remember at one point, it looked like he was about to cash out a very, very extremely deep long shot there in order to win. But he still ended up having a great day in 4th right there, Rich. And I know not many people were on him.
Wasn't he second?
Time, too. He finished 4th.
Finish 4th? For some reason, I thought he finished. No, that's right. Ty Gibbs was up there, and Michael McDowell was up there.
Yeah, it was Bowman, Reddick, Gibbs, Hand, and McDowell the top 5 last year, and Joey Hand started the farthest back from the 38th spot to finish 4th.
Yes, you were on Hand, and I was not. I remember that vividly.
Yeah, I guess the only concern I have with using data, and we still have to use data, and we still have to maybe look at road course history, but obviously with the weather, the last 2 races, it's like how much of that data is skewed by the weather, because last year was pretty damn sloppy. Like
the year before was worse.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't even know how much we should be trusting this. And what is the disparity between how these drivers have done in Chicago versus maybe some other street courses? And how big of a gap is there?
So, excellent question. There has not been a lot of, let me put it to you this way. The guys that you think are automatically the solid road course racers have not necessarily done well at Chicago, which doesn't surprise me because I would say it's a difficult track to get around, but there's not a lot of passing zones. I don't know that it's a real technical track, right? And the other thing that comes into it, how many times do we see guys run into the back of somebody, Sean? I mean, we saw numerous cars, right? So here's another interesting stat I found. There's only 3 drivers that have 2 top 10s in the last 2 Chicago street races. Michael McDowell, Kyle Busch, and Ty Gibbs. That's it. Of those 3, each of them has 1 top 5. And that's it. So even from a year-to-year standpoint, now we can argue the weather plays into it. And one thing I did find, Sean, you made the comment that Denny Hamlin hasn't done particularly well here. I think the rain's affected him more than not, because the year he started on the pole, he ended up finishing 11th. Last year, he started 11th and ended up involved in a wreck and finished 30th. But my point being is he obviously had enough speed to qualify on the pole, then qualify 11th, top 10 speed, had one basically top 10 finish. But we look back at it, and he has not been very good here. A lot of guys have been very good. The guys that were good 2 years ago weren't very good last year. To your point, Mark, I'm with you. We should always use data we have. But Sean, I'm okay throwing the data out the window. I don't know that it's going to help us. And I'm not even sure practice is going to help us. But I would argue that practice is going to be more helpful than any of the recent race data at this track.
I do agree with the point about practice data being the most helpful thing of all. I do think that that's where we're going to get a sense of how the drivers feel about their cars. But I will say this, though, that if the rain does come into play, or we know it's going to come into play, then we throw that completely out of the window right there.
That's fair. I just don't think the rain is, and that's why I don't know how much overlap we get. Because I forgot how sloppy last year was, because in my mind, Sean, year one was so sloppy. Like, I guess
year
that's
one
the
was
that,
especially sloppy, but year two was a little more clean, especially when you got towards the latter parts of that race as it stood, because then it became dry, and then we had more drivers treating it like a standard road course from there.
But to Mark's point, we definitely had enough people running each other in the braking zones and burying it in the tire barriers. I mean, I think that was the frustrating part, was even seeing good cars get buried in the tire barriers, have to get towed out, have damage, go a lap down, etc. Like
that
the amount
was,
of
yeah.
I mean, the amount of focus on like having to switch tires too because it was getting drier. Like these guys are going back and forth.
Yeah.
Hey, there might be weather coming in. So now you got guys coming in switching tires when they shouldn't have, and other guys risking it and staying on, different tires. And I don't know. I think there's just so much of that played out too, that it's like, again, who does normally well in road courses versus who hasn't performed well, and those might be your DFS opportunities, because everyone playing DFS for these slates are going to look at the historical data over the last two races and overlook that component of it. So that's where the ownership and leverage opportunities are going to be.
Well, and to your point on that, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, both races, because of what you guys were talking about with the rain and the timing of yellow flags changed strategy and gave drivers opportunities that they weren't going to have normally. Like, I'm trying to remember if it was Joey last year. Somebody ended up with a solid finish simply because of how the pit strategy worked out, because of the happenstance of when the cautions fell, which, Sean, if we get the rain, who knows when that's going to happen, right? Like that could be any number of things. And that's not even taking into consideration the wrecks and get buried in the tire barrier and all of that. So go ahead.
I'm just going to say what that matters more was the first year that we went to the Chicago street course, especially because then there was the element where NASCAR was deciding in the middle of the race when to call it because of the darkness factor that they were dealing with on the track. And that ended up affecting who was able to be towards the front at the end of that race. Because if you look back towards the amount of statistics that there were 2 years ago, 2023, you saw Justin Haley finish in the second position and lead 23 laps. That he got there just because of pit strategy that day in order to hold out and see if he could hold through the lead. But then SBG ended up catching him because he was just that much faster than him. So there you go. That's something that also was in play. So unusual strategies can also come into play with this race too.
For sure.
But before we get into our picks, just one more reminder. We are part of FantasyGuru.com, so we have many various packages that are available, even if you enjoy other sports outside NASCAR. You can get the NFL packages and the draft guide there's so much content to get you ready for football season. Well, technically we're already in football season, but you can get deeper immersed into it by getting the packages there. We still have the MLB content that you can get over there. We still have options for MVP, Platinum, VIP, or all-in packages. So be sure to look over there at FantasyGuru.com, see what package is right for you in order to start winning today. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments. Be sure to let us know how we're doing, how much you're enjoying the show and everything. But I think what you're going to get, we're now going to get to the part where everybody is going to enjoy, and that's the picks. So let's get right on into it, fellas. Top price picks to watch. So I'll start with you, Rich. Who do you got?
So I kind of cheated a little bit because I do want to see practice. I talk in the overview article that maybe it's a week to fade SVG simply because of his cost. He's $1,500 more than everybody else on the slate. That's a lot. We see that in trucks at times. We see that in Xfinity at times with Cup drivers coming down. We do not see that in Cup. Again, to me, that's almost like the trap bet, right? Like it's so obvious. Everybody's going to be on it. But we have to consider SVG. He's been good on every road course this year. other than the one bad finish. It's been top 5 in the last 2 years, I should say, because we've only had the one. We had Austin, and then we had Mexico City this year. And he did okay at COTA. He obviously won Mexico City. There's a reason he's at the top. But I could argue we could get away with fading him. That said, we're going to get into it, but there's plenty of values that we're going to be able to find, even chase and place differential. But it'd be impossible to ignore SVG. And then I'm really torn here. I'm either going to be on Reddick or Elliott, and then I'm either going to be on Gibbs or Bowman. And I don't really know which way I want to go on either of those, and here's why. Bowman won this race last year. He's desperate for a win. He can get there. At the same time, Ty Gibbs was a top 5 finisher. He's had 2 top 10s in the 2 events. I keep saying he's a better road course racer than gets credit for. He's trending in the right direction. They're talking about him on TV so much. He's trending in the right direction. So I'm a little torn there. Bowman had a nice race. But again, we'll look at practice times, and I think that practice and qualifying is probably going to dictate that. They're only separated by $200, so it's probably going to be who qualified, who's been faster in practice, who qualified further back type of thing. For Reddick and Elliott, it's the same thing. Both of them have been known to be pretty good road racers. Reddick a little more sore in this car. Both of them have been kind of trending in the right direction. With Elliott coming off the win, he's got some momentum, but at the same time, he's not as desperate as Reddick is. Again, practice qualifying will play into it. So that's where I'm at on the top tier.
I kind of dig those choices right there, too. I agree that practice is going to be a very big factor that we're going to have to keep an eye on. But, you mentioned SBG right there. There's a big price and salary difference for him on DraftKings compared to the rest of the field. But that's not as much the case on FanDuel. So I do want to point out the big difference right there, because whereas he's $1,500 more than the next driver on DK, it's only a $500 difference on FanDuel, where he's just ahead of Christopher Bell right there.
I'd be all over him on FanDuel then.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm probably going with a split, 2 lineups for this race. I'll do one SVG and one not. And the reason why is because of the amount of leverage you would get in a lineup without him. No one's going to have the same structure or build because of how priced up he is. So you could easily get away. If this is also a road course, so we don't have to worry about dominators like you said. So we could just kind of float around that 9K range for our entire lineup, and that would be completely contrarian versus the field, because we're going to get SVG at like a 60% ownership or higher, very likely. I don't know if we're hitting 70% ownership with him just because of the price point, but I think I want to get exposure in both directions. Bowman, I'm on him as well. He's a road racer. I feel like he gets overlooked in Cup for this type of driving experience. He obviously won last year, so he's not going to be completely overlooked for this specific race. But I think Reddick is going to be low owned, and it hasn't worked out for him. But I'm going to bring this theme up a couple times today, and they talked about it on the broadcast. I think we talked about it on the podcast. The speed doesn't necessarily have to be there on the year to be able to show up and perform well in a street race like this. So if there's one race that Reddick has circled, it's the race where last year he f***ed up and went into the wall on like the last lap and lost it. And now he desperately needs a win. This has got to be the one that he's got circled and saying, here's my way of getting a cheap victory, knowing our car is not nearly as good as, what we expected it to be going into the season.
Like that
Big
call.
time. I do think that Reddick has this race circled for sure. Because really, when you look back towards the other races on the schedule there, then the next race that he'll probably have circled after that might be Watkins Glen all the way in August right there. And that's a while away still. Another road course, but yeah. As far as the drivers that I'm on, I do have SBG on my list. I agree with the strategy 100% that I think you have to have some exposure to him, but also some exposure not on him, especially if you're playing GPP. I also have Christopher Bell on my list. Particularly, I want to target him on DraftKings because I think the salary right there is actually pretty approachable enough that you can experiment around with him. And even though he doesn't have the results to show it, Christopher Bell has displayed a lot of speed at this particular track in the past, and he's led a total of 51 laps, which is more than any other driver within the past 2 years of the Chicago street course. And he's been hot on the road courses within the past couple of starts because he has 3 straight finishes of second or better in the last 3 road course cup events. So he's been pretty good at this type of track. So we got to watch out for him right there too. I'm also on Chase Elliott as well, especially on FanDuel, where he's 11.5K. That's a very, very nice and approachable price right there, too. He's actually behind a lot of the other drivers. His price on DK is also pretty solid, too. He's 9.5K right there as well. He's been very solid on the road courses. He's been top 5 within the last 2 at both COTA and Mexico City. And then somebody we didn't really talk about that much, but I think we should never ignore on this track type, Chris Buescher right there. 8,600 on DraftKings, and then on FanDuel, he's only 9,500, so he's basically about as close you can get to a mid-tier option without basically calling him a mid-tier option, and he's been super consistent at this track type as well, finishing top 10 in the last couple of road races.
You know, I really considered him. I just felt like he was priced up. I love the Bell call. I go back to, I remember when they ran the Indy GP, Bell was the best looking of all the Joe Gibbs cars, and that never left me. Like, I look at Bell as one of the better road racers on this track. Him and William Byron cut from the same cloth. You wouldn't expect it being the dirt guys they are, and yet they're there. Reddick too. Reddick too is another dirt guy, right? I love the Buescher call. I feel bad. I apologize to everybody listening, and it's in Discord. I did not post Chris Buescher as a bet. When the wife and I were doing bets, she goes, "Who's that Buescher guy that you like? You just referred to him as Mr. Top 10. I think we should put a bet on him because you said he's just Mr. Top 10. That's all he does." And truth to form, he finished in ninth as Mr. Top 10. I love that call, Sean. I want him to be $500 to $600 cheaper. You're going to have to sell me on the $500 to $600.
Well, if you're going to talk about the price being the issue, then I'm just going to say that if you're already thinking that way, then that means you might want to consider him for tournament lines because I'm sure people are going to be afraid of paying up for that then.
See, there you go. Sell me the contrarian angle. All right, sold.
And he might be the perfect fit for that lineup where you don't play SVG. Because then you're just floating around that 9K range to fill out your entire lineup.
100%. And but Buescher does have a top 10 finish at Chicago before too, so it's not a question that he can do it once again. So there you go. Let's get into the mid-tier drivers to watch here. This is where we start to get a little more interesting with how we decide our drivers from here. So I'm going to go ahead and get in my 3 out of the way first. I've got Michael McDowell right there because I think this Tour track fits him perfectly. He has 2 top 10s at this track, and he's one of the few drivers out there that's openly expressed loving to race in the rain as well as in the dry conditions as well. And it's shown within his results right here. And he's just been flat out really solid at the road courses because you look back towards like the last 5 road course races, top 15 in all of them. So depending on where he qualifies, he can really pay off right there, especially because when you think about tournament lineups, he might be priced up a little bit higher than some of those other mid-tier drivers. But if you're thinking of him from the means of you want a guy in order to finish top 10, I love McDowell for that purpose right there. Then I have Austin Cindric. I think out of all the Penske drivers, he's the best road racer. And Austin Cindric, he's had some decent results at this track before. 2 top 15 finishes, including a top 10 run with a best finish of 6 right there. So he's another driver that I got my eye on right there. And then to round it out, I got Will Brown. I know we didn't go through the part-timers and open car list, but I think Will Brown is by far the most interesting name and the driver to watch out of that entire list of open and part-timer teams. He's driving for Kaulig Racing this week, so he's going to be teammates with AJ Allmendinger and Ty Dillon, so he can rely on Allmendinger for road racing experience in this car. And on top of that, well, people don't know about his background, but he's a supercars driver and comes from the same cloth as SVG. So that right there means if you don't know him, well, let's just say that for DFS, if you're listening to this show, you should start him because we saw what happened with SVG 2 years ago when nobody knew who he was.
Yeah, I went Will Brown as well.
Go ahead, Mark. I was going to say, you guys are getting me on Will Brown. I'm having Joey Hand flashbacks.
Well, my thing with Will Brown is a lot of the other, reasons that Sean had just mentioned, but he's also, if you look at DraftKings has got him at like plus 1,200 odds to win the race. And we don't even know the starting positions yet. So,
and he's cheap.
I'm trying to see if I can pull it up. It's either plus 1,200 or plus 2,200, but he's way up there for a guy that's $7,300. So
actually,
for that alone,
Mark, he's at 18 to 1 to win.
Okay, there you go. So, I mean, for that alone, I don't think I'm placing that actual bet, but I'm using that bet to measure how much value we're getting in the price point at $7,300, and you're not going to get a $7,300 driver with those types of odds, really. So he's right up there with McDowell and the same type of expectations. McDowell has been doing well on this track, so I like him. He's kind of the same thing as, to Rich's point with Buescher. It's the same component as that. And like for everything, all the reasons you were saying, Sean, and then Kyle Busch. I mean, it's a guy that, the last 2 races has started 18th and 19th and has finished in the top 10 in both of those races. So, if we see him around that 16, 17, 18, 19 starting position range, I don't see any reason why he couldn't, land in the top 10. And to go from 18th to 8th, it would be huge from a DFS perspective. And his ownership is going to be in check, just because of how the season has kind of looked for him and results, I would say, across the board this year. I don't think we're going to get any kind of crazy ownership out of Kyle Busch.
I 100% agree with you on that prospect regarding the Kyle Busch ownership, just because I'm sure some people are going to have flashbacks of his performance at Mexico City where he overdrove the car and took himself out of the race very early on, too. That's still going to be fresh in people's memories right there.
I love Kyle Busch this weekend. I love the price point on Kyle Busch this weekend. He has the 2 top 10s, as I said. I understand the rain played into it. But I'm with you guys, and I'm going to be an island on this. Give me Denny Hamlin at that price point. I know, Sean, he has struggled here, but, man, qualified pole finished 11th, qualified 11th, got it rather than a wreck. To me, that screams he's more like a top 10, top 15 guy, and we're getting him at $7,100. Like, I can't even fathom just the fact his price point is so low. Maybe the ownership's going to be higher. That scares me off of it. But I agree with you guys on the ownership of Kyle Busch. That's partly why I like it. But my gosh, I can't get away from Denny Hamlin at that price point. Like, it just pains me to be like, he's not that bad. It's kind of like Blaney last year. Even Blaney's pricing this year's down in that same range. So, and I keep saying this about Hocevar, but he did admit that they need to run well at Chicago, potentially get a win to get in. He's run well at the road courses in the past. He doesn't consider himself a road course racer, but he has at times. Again, 7,200. Maybe the ownership is a little light. He's priced down instead of when we have to pay the $8,000 like we do at the ovals. So I kind of like him. Although, like I said, the Will Brown call is starting to give me Joey Hand flashbacks. I'm starting to think, maybe at that 7,300. It's like what I like to highlight in the overview article. 12 plus 1,200 to win, 7,300 pricing. Like, it's going to be way out of whack. Like, when I put the sheet together later tonight, tomorrow, it is going to be so far out of whack where Joey Hand, where he's priced at. And I'm willing to bet Denny Hamlin's in the same boat because he's probably like 1,700 to win. I'm guessing somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know.
Whoa,
he's going to be
Denny Hamlin's kind of deep.
He's buried, yeah.
He's
plus
40 to 1. 40 to 1 to win.
40 to 1. My God, I want to put a buck on it just because, like,
that could go up dramatically even after qualifying too.
Yeah, I mean, if he qualifies inside the top 15 or something, I guess I shouldn't have been writing the books because I never would have put him at 40 to 1. I mean, if you're going to give me Will Brown, and I understand the SVG background, but he's not SVG. I mean, SVG over there is like, I'm not going to call him Dale Earnhardt, but I mean, he was the creme of the creme, and that ride's not terrible, but Kaulig hasn't. I mean, we haven't seen Dinger up front in these road races even a lot, So, wow, that's interesting. But yeah, give me Hamlin. I'm gonna have a hard time pivoting away from him.
We should add a segment, McChicken of the week, the bet to place tonight before qualifying. Hamlin is the McChicken of the week.
That's kind of what I've been trying to do a little bit with my bold bet calls of the week there, because Rich was like, you should make that a regular thing. So,
well, we can have the McChicken bets, because I tell you what, I'm probably going to ask Jen to put $1 on Denny Hamlin. Now, the offshore books are probably, I tell you what, I'm going to be really salty if the offshore books has Hamlin 17-1.
Is it for
Cup, Denny Hamlin.
No,
fair enough. So she's gonna go look. I'm gonna be salty. I'm gonna be salty if he's 17-1 on the offshore books. Like I'm gonna be very upset. That's
What
gonna
I
make
will
me mad.
What I will tell you though, Rich, is that this is a tease for later, but I think there's one line that's even more horribly off than that.
Oh, I'm ready to hear this.
I'll tell you soon once we get towards the other bet section, but it's my bold bet of the week.
Well,
right
let's hit the value picks, because I think you guys know where I'm going with my value picks.
All right, then. You know what? Since you're excited to talk about it, how about you talk about it first, Rich? Hit us.
Damn it! It's always Heim time. Give me Corey Heim at 6,700. I want me some Corey Heim. So I'm gonna have a hard time not putting him in a lineup. Todd Gilliland. I don't want to call him Mr. Top 10 at the road courses, but he's Mr. Top 15. I mean, and he's done well at Chicago. Like, he just hangs. I don't know if he's just like really good at keeping the car on the track and not overdriving it, because 15 years ago, Mark, that's everybody would get off the track at Sonoma and Watkins Glen. Like, it was a running joke. If you just found a way to keep it between the berms and the curbs, you were going to have a top 10 finish. Junior even came out and said that the one time, right? So maybe he's just that good at it. I don't know. But give me Gilliland. And I can't believe I'm going to suggest this, but guys, I might throw in Ricky Stenhouse. I don't think the ownership will be there. He had a good finish last year, and I understand different scenarios played into it, but he's been okay on the road courses the last couple years. Like, not anything to write home about, but here again, the car consistently qualifies near 30th, as Sean has pointed out. We just need a 20th place finish from him at $5,700.
Oh, yeah.
165, Grand Park 165.
Yeah, that's it.
You want Hamlin to win?
I'm just curious what his odds are.
Plus 6,000.
60-1 offshore.
Nice.
Oh, my gosh.
We wouldn't have put $1 on. No, $1.
No, $10.
We're not putting. Don't do that. Put $1.
That's crazy.
How much is a
What, $1 to win 60? $1 to win $60?
Whatever. I've wasted $10 worth.
Oh,
Yeah, plus
okay.
6,000.
Well, there we go. We just threw away $10, but hey,
Wow.
that's fine.
Just go to McDonald's and see how much the cost of a McChicken is and put that exact amount down.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a McChicken bet, so it's supposed to be whatever a McChicken costs. No, she said it's $10. I don't think it is, but we'll roll with it.
That's the
Maybe we're in
50-piecer.
California.
That's a 50-piece chicken nugget meal.
Yeah. You know what? If we're gonna make these McChicken bets a thing, we gotta start being like, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm betting it.
Oh, you are doing the soundbite for it because
Yeah.
you did it way better than I could. That
Just
is all
take
you
that
got.
soundbite because
Yes,
McDonald's
we need
might
it
come
saved.
at us after the licensing.
We need that saved so you can hit a button when we do our McChicken bets coming in the show's forthcoming. I think that needs to be a segment. Yes.
All right. We can plan and working on that. We can work on that. Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, that's where I was at with Stenhouse. I would consider John Hunter Nemechek, but again, it's the price point. Whatever. John Hunter's been pretty decent on road courses. I've talked enough. Take it off, guys.
All right, Mark, you go ahead with your next few drivers here.
I love that Stenhouse call, but I went ahead and I pulled the trigger on Justin Haley at $6,800. So Justin Haley, he's got some skewed stats here, obviously with the second place finish a couple of years ago, but even last year, 16th. So another guy who's qualifying, probably in the mid 20s somewhere that could skirt right around the top 15. This is certainly a driver that needs a good finish, so I like taking a shot on him. Gilliland, you talked about Gilliland, and he just, in my opinion, he's mispriced. Like he should be much closer in pricing to McDowell, but because the algorithm is pushing him down based off of how he does on other tracks, basically. And then Cole Custer, for the same reasons that I'm on to Tyler Reddick. We just saw him perform well, and I think that the Mexico race. So again, where you don't need speed, we could see another strong weekend from Cole Custer.
Custer's a good little road racer, man. I like that call a lot.
Mark's remembering what happened at Mexico when he was like, "Oh, I should have been on him." He's like, "He's not getting away from me this time."
Yep,
that's a good little call there.
That one's left a stain with me for a few weeks now. So,
getting into my drivers here, I also have Todd Gilliland, so we can sweep with the Todd father right here. I also think he's kind of underpriced for where he is right here this week. 6,500. I think he belongs in the 7K range based on past performance here. And he's 4,200 on FanDuel, which is dirt cheap as well right there too. Love that right there for him. Then I also have Cole Custer there. So yeah, you're not the only one in the Custer boat there, Mark. I got him too. I think he's kind of underrated when this kind of racing comes up. And he also is a former Xfinity Series winner at this track, too. Let's not forget about that either.
That's right. And he ran well that race, too. He kind of was the guy to beat that day. Yeah, he was the guy to beat that day. Yeah, he did.
And then the last name, well, I'm going to roll it back once again, Rich. I'm going Bubba once again on a road course. So, right there.
Ballsy. I don't hate it. It's worked. It worked. Was it Coda? There, I would say, was it Coda? There was a track where I ate crow on it, man. So I'm not going to knock it by any means.
And on top of that, he's continuing to have a steady top 20 streak that, by the way, that also continued when we talked about him the last time at Mexico City as well, where he ended up finishing in the 12th position right there. In fact, you got to go back quite a ways in order to find that the last time he finished outside of the top 20 at a road course. And that, I'm looking back here, that's all the way back in July of 2023 in this very race 2 years ago. Top 20 in every road race since then.
Interesting.
And you look towards where his salary is, he's only 6,400 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he's 4,500, which is even cheaper in the context of that.
So as we segue into our next group here, something I'm noticing, because I was trying to mess around with the lineup while we were going through that, so I apologize if you saw me over here dinking around. That's what I was doing. There's enough values. It's not going to be hard to use SVG at his price point. There is a lot of values. So I don't know if you guys kind of filled out a lineup after you did your core four, but I'm curious because I just filled one out. You can get some top end talent in there, man.
Yeah, I went SVG, Bowman, Brown, and Custer, and I had Haley in there all the way up until a few minutes ago. But it's to your point, Rich. You do have to go the value range. It's hard to get the 7K guys, and then so I think about that, and I'm like, well, anyone that plays SVG is going to be doubling up, tripling up on those value plays like you just mentioned. You probably are going to need more than one. So how can you maybe build a lineup where you only have one value play? And that might be the play to do it, especially if the weather ends up being pretty clean. So that's my concern with that is all of the guys in the value tier, their ownership is probably going to be higher this week than what we normally see on other races.
Yeah, I could certainly believe that.
So
115 top 10.
So I went, you like that one too? Mark's in on it.
Yeah.
So is Sean. So just to give you guys an idea, I went SVG, Hamlin, Busch, and Heim, right? I don't think you guys are shocked based on the way I was describing those guys, okay? Here's what's really interesting. If you go with those four, you can go up. If you use Gilliland, you can go all the way up to William Byron. You can't get to Bell, but you can get to William Byron. All right. If you go, say, Chris Buescher, you can easily, you have money left over and can use Will Brown. You can go up and get a Ryan Blaney if you want. Just for fun, I threw in Ty Gibbs, right? Because it's kind of probably a low contrarian ownership type of play, right? But you're paying up for him, so high risk. I can still put Hocevar in there and have no money left. So just to give you an idea, if going SVG, Hamlin, Busch, Heim, there's a lot, and I'm not saying everybody should do that. There's a lot of options where if you really want to put Bell in there, yeah, you got to get a little more creative at that punt option. You can't go with Gillen, but you could go with Stenhouse, you know? So you could easily get SVG and one of the other top couple of guys you're wanting, because especially to your guys' point about that 7,000 range, if you're playing with the low end of the 7,000 range on at least one of those drivers, if not two, man, there's a lot of options for the lineups. Like, I was kind of shocked. I played around with Chris Buescher. I could put Chris Buescher in there and William Byron in there, you know, or Will Brown. I'm going to keep calling Will Brown William Byron until I turn blue, apparently. But you get what I'm saying. So, I mean, you know, some of these guys we really like, man, we can still build a pretty. Now, to Mark's point, what he told me months ago, if you're not a little uneasy with your lineup, you probably haven't built a winning lineup. I'm a little too happy with Hocevar and Hocevar and Gibbs has me nervous. I mean, those are two guys that I don't know. Man, they're kind of wild cards, right?
Especially Hocevar.
Right. Buescher and Will Brown, that's a little more like, man, I feel really pretty good about that, right? And Hocevar is wild, but honestly, Mark, I think I'm more apprehensive about Gibbs at 9,300 than I am Hocevar at 7,200. And maybe that's because of the ownership. Maybe I feel like there's safety with ownership at 7,200 and Hocevar, and at 9,300. Do you guys think I'm off if I say Gibbs is going to be less than 10% owned?
I think it'll be higher than that.
I also think higher.
Okay.
Probably
I trust your guys' judgment on it. What's that?
Probably 15 to 20, which is still pretty good, like for that type of driver.
I'm willing to wager around 20. That seems about right to me.
Okay. And it all depends. I mean, the starting position, like, here's the thing. You could feel good about it now, but once their starting positions come out, well, hey, maybe you now feel a little uneasy about that lineup because they're all starting in the front or they're all starting in the back.
Right.
Or
That's a good
something
point.
like that. So,
yeah, that's a good point, Mark.
I think you almost have to remember to relook at it after qualifying happens and then see how you feel.
I think that's a good point. And I keep reminding myself, quit chasing positions, start chasing points. And that has worked well for me. I don't know if that's a mentality that works for everybody, but to your point, Mark, that's when I start looking at and go, wait a second here. I know I need to have one or two contrarian plays. What are some of the contrarian plays I like where I'm getting the most points? Like, I like Ty Gibbs, great, but he's starting 7th. Okay, I'm hoping for a 3rd place finish. That's not a lot of points to chase. I'm chasing a finishing position. Whereas, say, Buescher starts 17th, well, I'm hoping he gets 9th. Now I'm chasing almost 10 bonus points, and it's only a handful of points less from a place position. So why don't I go here? And now I can pay. I don't have to use Hocevar. Now I have a few $100s left. Now Will Brown, Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace. Some of these guys are now in play that weren't otherwise, right? So, all right, I dig it. See, I told you, man, you guys got to get my brain right, man. Sometimes you got to get me on the right path. I'm over here in freaking tangent land.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a little finagling in order to figure out the straight path right there. So there you go, I guess. Getting into my core 4 picks for DFS, I got SVG at 12K and 14 on DK and 14K on FanDuel. Chris Buescher 8,600 on DraftKings, 9,500 on FanDuel. Will Brown, yeah, he made the core 4, 7,300 on DraftKings and 7,500 on FanDuel. And then rounding it out, I have Todd Gilliland at 6,500 on DraftKings and 4,200 on FanDuel.
I tell you what, Sean, on that lineup, I bet you could go Ricky Stenhouse and Christopher Bell, or Ricky Stenhouse and Bowman along with that.
Yeah, I believe you may be correct about that. Actually,
The only reason,
it gives
Go
me an
ahead.
average of 7,800 when I put those 4 in. So I can easily fit in 2 7K guys, or I could fit in like a 9K guy, or like a low end 6K guy, perhaps.
Rich's
too.
Hamlin. Get Hamlin in there, and then you go up to like Busher or something like that.
If I throw Hamlin in there, well, I already got Busher into the lineup, but it gets me as high as McDowell pretty much right there.
which is another one of your guys.
Yeah. If I ended up going, let's say, Stenhouse, for example, that gets me all the way up to Reddick right there.
Okay.
Mm.
So not quite Bell territory, but that does put you in with Bowman territory. Bowman will be under Reddick.
Yeah, and so is Elliott, who I also like quite a bit.
Yeah. Too. My gosh, now I got like 4 lineups I want to do because I want to build off of your guys' core 4 and mine.
This is also like probably a really good race where you could leave like $1,200 on the table too.
That's fair. That's fair because if you go look at like if you want to kind of guess what the best lineup was for last year, unless you guys know how to go back and look it up because I don't. I guarantee you the best scoring lineup did have somewhere around $1,000 left over. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at Ty Gibbs wasn't priced as high as he is this year, right? So if you look at just the top 5 finishers, we know Joey Hand wasn't because Sean already pointed out how cheap he was last year. You easily could have had, especially the top 3 guys, like I said, priced this year ended up in the back. So say you faded them, that already saved you a whole bunch of money. You're already playing with nobody higher than 9,000 something in your lineup.
Just going to also point this out right here, too. But if you insert my core 4 into FanDuel, it gets you $14,800 remaining for your salary, which lets you put any driver in as your last guy.
That's everybody. You can use anybody you want.
Yeah. So in that sense, there's a case that can be made to maybe consider upgrading one of those guys or two to get somebody even higher to finish.
All right. Should we get into our bets?
Yeah, let's go through the betting core 4 winners right here. So I got SBG. He is at plus 185 as of us doing the show right now. So I would consider live betting him instead in case the odds end up going a little bit deeper. But I do think that he's going to be in the conversation to win right there. Christopher Bell at plus 750. Yeah, I'm also going there too. Will Brown 18-1. And Chris Buescher is at 22-1 in order to win. So he's also a little bit down there as well. But I think Buescher is somebody we got to keep an eye on too for betting purposes. Mark, I'll hand it to you next. Who do you got?
So I threw in SVG at plus 185 just because of the expected dominance that we could see from him. And then I went into that plus 1,000 range. So Reddick at plus 1,200. Again, this is the race that he has circled. Bowman at plus 2,200, returning champ here. And then Ty Gibbs, who we've talked about being a good road racer. I might not have exposure to him in my DFS lineup. So this is a perfect way of getting exposure to him in some capacity this weekend at plus 1,200 as well.
I like the calls right there. I especially really like the Bowman call right there. 22-1. I absolutely would take that myself too. I love that call right there. Rich, you're up next. Who do you got?
So I'm chasing some top 10s. Give me Denny Hamlin for a top 10 at plus 150. Corey Heim at plus 350. Kyle Busch at plus 110. I will say this. If you are building DFS lineups with those 3 guys, do not place those 3 bets. If you're placing those 3 bets, I would strongly consider not using more than one of them in your DFS lineup. I just really struggle with the odds being what they are. Do I think Heim's likely at plus 350? No, I think a top 15 is likely. But at 3.5 times my money, I'm willing to kind of gamble on those last 5 spots. Kyle Busch, he's been a top 10 guy. He's been top 10 speed. So there's nothing odd about that other than Sean's point of he's been his own worst enemy. Does that change this weekend or not? Hard to say. I don't really love it at almost even money at plus 110, but it is plus money for a guy that he's only one of 3 drivers that has 2 top 10s here, whereas Gibbs is, say, minus money. And then, the other one there, Hamlin, it's 1.5 times your money for a top 10. And going back and looking at the numbers, everything screams top 10 except for the one finish, right? The pole qualifying, the 11th place qualifying, the 11th place finish, all that's in that same ballpark. So that's where I'm coming from. But to Mark's point earlier, and Sean's in the same boat, don't place the same bets that you're building the DFS lineups around. Don't do it.
Fair enough. Good point made. So let's get into some of our last few betting picks right here. Some of the other stuff right here. Mark, I see you put one of the head-to-heads right there. How about we start with you and you get into detail with that head-to-head that you put?
Yeah, when we were talking about the in-season challenge, this was probably the only head-to-head bet that I liked or felt good about. And Buescher over Zane Smith at minus 230. So Buescher, we've talked about a lot of reasons why we like him. He very well could land himself in the top 10. So, if you're looking for a head-to-head, that's probably the one that I like. I'm not huge on taking a bet at minus 230, but when it's Zane Smith, we're working on a very little amount of data. He finished 17th in his previous race here. And again, as a betting man, I would think Buescher can easily crack into the top 15, and I would have a hard time thinking Zane Smith would do the same thing with him.
I agree with that call. I think Buescher's definitely the play if you told me to pick one of the two. 100% in agreement with you. So I'll get into my bets right here because I actually have a couple right here. So this first one here is a top 5 bet. It's a little bit on the bold side, but I kind of like this enough in order to think it has a good chance. But give me Michael McDowell to get a top 5 at plus 275 right there. So he's actually gotten one top 5 finish, and in the other Chicago race, he was 2 positions away from doing that once again. And I think out of all the drivers, he's been the closest driver to get 2 top 5 finishes at Chicago in the entire field. And as mentioned, the conditions, whether it's rain or shine, they do not bother McDowell on this kind of track. He loves racing on this kind of track, whether it's wet or dry. So I think there's a good chance he might get that done. I'm also in agreement with Rich right there with the Kyle Busch top 10 at plus 110. So yeah, that's on my list right there too. Then I also have Austin Cindric in order to get a top 10 finish at plus 180. I think that line is a little slightly off, especially considering some of the other drivers that have their top 10 odds being a little less friendly than that. So I do think that Cindric is a driver that we got to like there. And then for a little bit of a deeper call for the top 10s here, give me Todd Gilliland, the Todd father, in order to get a top 10 finish. He's at plus 450. So that's actually quite deep right there in the field, considering Gilliland has actually gotten a top 10 at this track before. And now, as for what I was teasing earlier to Rich, the bold bet of the week right here, it's Austin Cindric in order to outright win because he's even deeper than Hamlin on DraftKings. He's not at 40-1 like Hamlin. He's at 50-1, plus 5,000 in order to win. And Cindric has historically been a little bit faster at this track than Hamlin has too. So I really think that the books are severely undervaluing Austin Cindric this week. So I got to give it to him right there as a bold call right there.
I love it. And I will say this, for guys I like to win, I'm kind of floating in that plus 1,200 to plus 2,200 range. Like, I love the call on Bowman at plus 2,200. That is, the odds aren't right. I don't know how you have a guy that needs a win, that's been running well lately, that has a win at this track, and you have him priced at 22-1. That just seems odd to me. I love the Elliott call. I think that's reasonable. Reddick. The name we haven't mentioned that I think we should keep on our radar, William Byron at 12-1.
Yeah, I do actually not mind Willie B at this. Well, okay, I'm going to have to say Byron because Willie B could describe Will Brown or Byron. Now I see your problem there. But yeah, I do like Byron as well. I think he's definitely a driver that can get a pretty solid finish. He's done so before at this track. But also, I do want to give a shout out to all the different drivers that they specifically have at 22-1, and specifically that to win. Because we mentioned Buescher at 22-1. We mentioned Bowman's at 22-1. Michael McDowell is also 22-1 in order to win. You also have AJ Allmendinger at that same number, and Ross Chastain as well. That's a pretty solid list of drivers there with the same exact odds of plus 2,200 this week to win.
Just take like all those guys at plus 2,200 and you'll be at the edge of your seat from the beginning to the end of the race, because some of them are going to qualify well. I like your Michael McDowell top 5 bet. Like that is going to be, that's another bet to place now before qualifying, because he qualifies in like the 7th position. That's got to be getting closer to even money at that point.
Oh, definitely, for sure. As of right now, when we're doing this show, there's only 3 drivers that have minus odds as it is for even a top 5, and that's SVG, Larson, and Christopher Bell. So I expect that number to increase by the time qualifying is all wrapped up there, to your point,
Man,
Mark.
I kind of like Willie Byron at 1.5 for a top 5. I mean, he consistently has been him and Bell have consistently been top 5 drivers on these road courses, man. Like the last 2 to 3 years. This isn't just this year. I mean, this has been a consistent thing lately. Of course, Chase Elliott plus 250 is kind of crazy. Seems a bit odd.
Yeah.
So, well, you guys have any other thoughts or closing thoughts before we head out? Mark, what do you got coming down the pipe? You got, because UFL's done, right?
Yeah, UFL's done. So next thing for me is I'll be doing just NASCAR for the next couple of weeks, and then NFL preseason. I'm expecting that to come around, and we're pretty much in the NFL season at this point. So plenty more football content to come, and I've got a few ideas to bring to the table with Jeff and the rest of the crew on some other stuff that I'll be planning on doing in the fall. So stay tuned for that, but not public yet.
Awesome.
That's a nice tease right there, Mark. I know you've done so much great content over at fantasyguru.com, so I'm looking forward to see what you got on deck right there.
Appreciate it. What about you guys?
I'm in NASCAR mode. The football stuff, I don't do much for preseason. Once we get into the regular season, I'm assuming I'll be doing a lot of the same stuff I've done in the past. You can always check out our magazine. We've got stuff in there. I do have an article in there, even though my name's not on it, but it is in there. So that's always kind of something fun. It's still cool, right? Like, I mean, seeing it in black and white and turning pages, it's still cool. So we got that going on. And Sean, I mean, you're almost always behind the curtains, but you're going to be super busy here over the next, with all the podcasts and everything that are dropping for the guide. So
yeah, I'm going to be contributing to a lot of the podcast work and live stream work for Fantasy Guru as it stands, since I'm expecting that to ramp up a little bit when football season comes around too. In the meantime, I'll still be working on One Man's Opinion, and I'll still be covering NASCAR slates wherever possible that I can. So that's what I got going on right there.
Well, excellent. Well, on behalf of myself and Sean, please give Sean a follow on X at SeanE247. That's SEAN. And Mark a follow on X at DFS_Marlin. Please head over to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe button, see if there's a package there that works for you. We welcome all our members. The Discord channel is always hopping, especially for the football. I think we get the NASCAR channel hopping pretty good too. That's always a fun discussion there. A lot of good people in our NASCAR Discord. Like, that's my safe home. I don't believe in safe spaces, but man, I enjoy going into NASCAR Discord, all our NASCAR channels. Some of the other channels, not as much, but the NASCAR ones, absolutely love and adore. So please continue to support us over there. We love hearing from you. We love the screenshots. And then, please hit the like and subscribe button. But on behalf of Sean Engel and Mark Hogan, I am Rich Maletto. This is the Race Guru Thunder Hour. Until next time, peace.